I recently saw a video by Alan Dershowitz. Now, if you don't know who he is, this man has been a lawyer for a long time. He's an old man now. Most of his life, he's been a Democrat. He's espoused Democrat ideals. Basically, he's been one of the perfect Democrats. But he has been a classic liberal over a modern liberal. Two different political philosophies, and it shows in what he is doing now. But he had an interesting perspective on the auto pen and how it was used in the Biden administration. Because nobody thinks that it was used by Biden. Everybody knows that it was used by his staff and that he didn't know what was going on. But I want you to actually hear what Dershowitz has to say about the use of the auto pen and the legalities of it. Also, if you don't mind, hit like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. So, after my introduction, here we go.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
Of auto pens. And the question is Trump right that pardons that are signed by an auto pen are invalid? And so there are two questions when it comes to auto pens and documents. First, the nature of the document. And here I'm going to surprise people. I haven't heard anybody mention this point at all, but it's in the Constitution, so I am going to mention it. There's a difference among documents that are signed or have to be signed by the president. Let's take, for example, a bill. We remember all from Civics 1, a bill becomes a law. When does a bill become the law? When the president signs it, or if the president doesn't sign it and vetoes it, when the veto is overcome by the votes of this and that and the other thing. Okay, what does the Constitution say? The Constitution is very clear that if the president approves the bill, quote, he shall sign it. He shall sign it, not an auto pen. He shall sign it. That seems to strongly suggest he has to pick up a pen. There has to be a document. He has to put pen on paper and sign. Now, as I mentioned previously, who invented the auto pen? It was invented by Thomas Jefferson, but it was not the same kind of auto pen we're talking about now. The Jefferson auto pen was a pen which had 5 wires attached to it. The president would sign the document, the bill. So the bill was signed directly by the president, but then there'd be 5 other signatures on other pieces of paper that were done by other pens attached to the first pen. So that was the auto pen. He didn't call it an auto pen. He called it by an interesting name, a polygraph. Now that's a much better literal understanding of the word polygraph than the way we use it today as a lie detector. Lie detector has nothing to do with polygraph. The only reason they call it a polygraph is because it involves many graphs. Poly means many, graph means graph. And so, but the original a polygraph was many pens, not many graphs. And so when President Jefferson signed documents, he actually signed them. Today, just 15 minutes ago, I saw an interview with Steve Miller on television. He was the president's assistant, and he was asked the direct question, did President Trump ever use an auto pen? He didn't quite answer that question, but he did say, as far as I know, every time the president signed an executive order, he did it himself. And we see on television, he's very proud of his signature. He has a beautiful signature. I know, I have copies of it because he's written to me with his signature. But he wouldn't categorically state that he never used an auto pen. So the first question is, what was the nature of the document if it was a bill, I think they have a very strong case that that's not a valid signature. The Constitution says he shall sign it. Doesn't mean he can't delegate it. He can't delegate it to a machine. He can't delegate it to a different individual. For example, he can't say, well, Vice President, I'd like you to sign it in my stead. No, that would be illegal. It has to be the president who signs it, not the vice president. And the president can't authorize the attorney general or the vice president to sign it. He shall sign it. He shall sign it. Doesn't say he will, it says he shall. Shall is a very strong word. He shall sign it. Now, there's no comparable language when it comes to pardons. It doesn't say he has to sign anything. Here's what it says in the Constitution. President shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. He shall have the power. And so there is an argument, don't know whether it's a valid one, but it's an argument. I mean, these arguments have never been made before, that could say that a president can exercise the power of granting a pardon without even writing anything. All he can say is, I hereby pardon you. And according to the Constitution, at least, if there's a witness or there's evidence of it, the pardon is valid. But it still raises the question, he has the power to pardon. He has the power to pardon, not somebody else. And so he shall have the power to grant. So the question is, did Biden actually exercise that power, or did somebody exercise it on his behalf? So that's a valid question. Aside from the autopen, which I don't think applies necessarily to the issue of pardons, because there's no obligation, no requirement in the Constitution of signing anything. But he shall have the power. And so if it can be demonstrated that it wasn't he who exercised that power, obviously it was he who exercised the power to pardon his son. We know that. But did he exercise the power to pardon all the January 6th congressional committee members, or was that somebody on his staff? Now, I can tell you my son.
So you just heard what Alan Dershowitz had to say. This is a man that's got decades of experience. He's not always been somebody who's agreed with the conservative mindset. He doesn't always agree with the liberal mindset. He follows the law. You can agree with him, disagree with him, but he's got a good perspective on things, and I thought that was an interesting perspective. Now, for those of you who are listening that may go, well, what's that got to do with everything? I've got a clip here, and it's not the clip from, this is a clip of Mike Johnson talking about Biden and a conversation that they had. And if you've heard him talk about this before, this is not where he's sitting down at CPAC. This is a later interview. And in this interview, it goes into further detail as to exactly what Johnson and he and Biden were talking about. So there's that. I left it a little long because people don't understand why I go after China. And in it talks about why China has been far more of an adversary to the U.S. than, say, Russia. Everybody's like, Ukraine and Russia. No. We actually need to pay attention to China far more than Russia. Russia is just compared to what China's doing, and this gives you a little bit more insight into that. But let's get into that.
Drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. You have a good bill, H.R. 1, which the House has passed. The Senate never passed it. That's too bad. Just as a point, my pal Faulkner here in the front row, when Trump goes through this, he should do better on the explaining. So if you do the permitting reform, yes. Okay, or redo, because we had one federal decision. That was an NEC account also. But. Energy costs permeate the entire economy. That word permeate, which is a Faulkner word, said on a terrific TV show I know of. But in all seriousness, that's what could actually bring prices down.
Yes.
So if you permit more and you produce more, say you go from 13 million barrels a day, where that was the peak 4 years ago. They haven't. They're back to 13 million. Big deal. They should be at 16 million barrels a day or some such thing. If you do that, and the price drops back to, let's say, $40, $45. I have a list. I'm not going to bore you with it, but there's 200 or 300 items of ordinary consumer goods, healthcare goods, all kinds of things whose price would fall as the price of petroleum and related, like petrochemicals. All that stuff would fall. There you go.
Yes.
Right.
We should permeate every area of the economy.
Yes.
With our energy supply. Look, it is maddening public policy to turn off the spigots, and that's what we've done. I confronted President Biden myself personally about his executive order to pause LNG exports, for example, and this has been reported, so I'll just tell you, it's already public. But I confronted him. I said, why would you do that? You're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because our European allies have to get their natural gas and energy needs from Russia instead of us. They desperately want it. I've spoken to them. Why would you do it? He said, I didn't do that. I said, yes, you did. And this is just a few weeks after the executive order, and he tried to argue with me that it didn't happen. And he said, oh, you misunderstand. That's just all I signed was an order to conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, sir. I'm from Louisiana. The export terminals are in my state. That's not true. I'm not sure he actually knew what he was doing there, Larry, which is back to the question earlier, who's running the country. It's pretty frightening. But it's had untold disastrous economic and national security effects and implications. And yes, it permeates it. And energy policy is at the center of our economic strength, and we've got to turn it back on. And energy dominance is the buzzword.
Did you ever ask him why he relaxed the oil production sanctions and shipping on Iran, which has gone from foreign exchange, I don't know, less than $1 billion worth of foreign exchange to $70, $80 billion. It's all oil money. It's all oil production money sold to China. Or did you ever ask him if he's thought about China right now? China, which is buying the oil from Iran, okay, most of it, half of it, more than half of it, and buying oil from Russia. China is basically financing 2 wars against the United States through its oil purchases, all right, which was supposed to be sanctioned. Now, I know somebody that would slap a whole lot more tariffs on China if they ever pulled that kind of trick. But basically, did you ever ask him about, does he have any sense of what China is doing, even though it never sees the light of day? Whenever they have these, they're sending another group over there now. I don't know what they do. I was in a trade group. We won several times. Lighthizer and Mnuchin were running it. We actually got a deal. I don't know whether they enforced it or not. But the point is, does he know? Does he understand that? China is financing 2 wars with oil money against the United States.
I wish we could get those answers, and I wish they would come to the table and have thoughtful discussions with us, but that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened for 4 years because they're pursuing this agenda, and it's terrible for the country. And so we have to defeat them at the ballot box. We have to win back the levers of power because it's too dangerous. As I mentioned, these 2 completely different visions, we will lose the country if we don't get this back in our hands, and we're going to be very responsible for it. But this one's for all the marbles, and everybody knows it.
People can wonder all they want, but what was going on in the past presidency was a horror to this country. Seriously, it was what was done in the past presidency was a bunch of unelected bureaucrats run amok. Now, we've been having that for decades upon decades, but the last presidency, we had a president that couldn't function, and so the person that was supposedly elected by the people, well, guess what? He didn't know what he was doing. So the people were uninformed that voted for him, and yeah, it's just a whole big mess. But I thought I'd show you this perspective. If you made it this far, like I said, if you don't mind, hit like, subscribe. I bring these kinds of conversations to the forefront. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.